Welcome to SportsKorner. I'm DJ Eberly, and alongside me is Mike Sicoscio. We have a busy day ahead of us today. We'll have Hank Doman in the studio with us to talk some college basketball in our segment Bottom of the Ninth. Me and Mike will also be discussing our talking points, which will revolve around various topics in the sporting world. But first off, we have a bit of a recap of the Siena MAC championship game.
In order for the Siena Saints to make it to the March Madness tournament for the third straight year, they had to beat the Fairfield Stags in the MAC championship game last week. During the game, the Fairfield Stags built up a staggering lead. But then, in the second half, the Saints mounted a large comeback and forced overtime, which was purely dominated by the Saints. Senior forward Edwin Ubilis, who scored 27 points in the game. So now for the third straight year, the Saints are in the March Madness tournament. In 2008, they won 2 games, and last year they won once. But now, after Selection Sunday, the Saints are the 13th seed, and they have to face a tough Purdue Boilermakers. But then the Boilermakers lost Robert Hummel, who was once National Player of the Year possibility, to season-ending injury. So the Saints might actually be favored to win that game. And then if they do win that game, they'd have to face the winner of Texas A&M and Utah State. And we all know that the 5-12 games are often upsets. So if Siena faces Utah State or even A&M, they do have a possibility of winning that game. So nobody really knows how far the Saints can go this year.
I would agree with you, Mike. I believe that the Saints could go to the Sweet 16, very likely the Elite 8 if Duke does lose to either Cal or Louisville. It's very possible.
They'd have to have a few strong games from Alex Franklin and Edwin Ubilis, and nobody on the team can really slack if they're going to make it that far.
Yeah. I mean, this is something that Siena has never. That would be something that Siena has never been a part of before. And I mean, Duke almost lost last year in the first round when they were a 2 seed.
Like I said, only time will tell for the Siena Saints.
Time will only tell.
Here at SportsKorner, bringing you our segment called Bottom of the Ninth. Today, Times Union sports editor Hank Doman will be talking a little college basketball with our own DJ Eberly. So guys, here are our questions today. Question 1. How far do you think the Siena Saints can go in this year's March Madness tournament?
DJ, we're reading and we're hearing and everyone's picking them in the Sweet 16. And I certainly understand why some people might think that, but I have to say, I don't think so. I think Siena's going down. I think they're going down in the first round. I'm afraid so. They haven't beaten a darn team all season.
But Purdue's been flopping us of late, though, without Robbie Hummel.
They certainly have, and with Robbie Hummel, this is a slam dunk. And maybe they're even a 2 or a 3 seed if they have Robbie Hummel. But I still think they're big enough. I think they're more athletic, and I know Siena's got experience, but I just don't see it happening.
I don't know. I feel with Siena, because of the experience they have and the fact that most likely Robbie Hummel will be out, they could beat Purdue, advance. I think that Louisville will beat Duke when it comes to the Sweet 16. I could see Elite 8 Louisville and Siena as drastic as that sounds.
Boy, and I'll be cheering for it, and I sure hope it happens. But and the other thing to think about with Siena now too is the Clarence Jackson injury. That could be huge. I know he's maybe the 5th best person on the team, but you're going to put Kyle Downey at point guard after he missed part of the season with injury and has not really ever had an experience like this. You got some question marks coming in.
I agree, but I think that without Robbie Hummel, Purdue is not much.
The other factor to consider too is the bulletin board material Purdue now has. They've got Seth Davis picking Siena to the Sweet 16. They've got, and they're only a 3.5-point favorite in Vegas, and it's a 4 seed against a 13. That's got to be unheard of. And if I'm Purdue, I'm pretty upset about that.
I agree. I think I was on Fox Sports yesterday, filling out my bracket, and I saw that Siena was favored over Purdue. That more people were voting for Siena in the first round.
Like I say, I hope Siena does it.
Well, Hank, that is using your brain, but I got to go with the local team. I like Siena. They are the only local team representing us, so I hope that they go far. I'm going to side with DJ on this one. But next question. What team seeded 5 or lower will be able to be this year's Cinderella story?
I hate taking chalk, but there's 2 5 seeds that I love. Temple. I think Temple, they played a tough schedule. Atlantic 10 was a good conference this year, and I just saw them in the championship game against Richmond. They looked pretty solid. They almost coughed it up at the end, but I think they've got the bodies. They played a great game against Siena. They really dominated Siena. Pulled it out in the end, but it was a strong effort. And then the other one I really like is another team that beat the heck out of Siena, and that's Butler. Butler, I think they line up very well. If they can get past Vanderbilt in the second round, they're going to be a real tough test if Syracuse is able to win a couple of games. So Butler and Temple are my picks.
I like a few of them. I do agree with Butler and Temple. I have Butler advancing, but I think that Butler may lose to I think Murray State could beat Vanderbilt, which I know that some people were saying that is a possibility.
Mm-hmm.
But then Butler will advance, but I don't think they'll get past Syracuse. But what I'm focusing on is Tennessee. I'm liking the 6 seed Tennessee. I think that they have beaten champions like Kentucky was ranked first at the time, Kansas was ranked first at the time. I think that they will beat San Diego State, and I think they could beat Georgetown, because Georgetown, sure, they did well in the the Big East tournament, but throughout the regular season, they were not as potent as Tennessee was. I also think Louisville, with Rick Pitino, he knows what he's coaching. He's been to many tournaments with many different teams. He's been to Final Fours with, I believe, 3 different teams. And I think Louisville could go in, and I think they can take down both Cal and Duke. Duke almost lost last year when they were a 2 seed in the first round, and they lost in the second round. Duke is very shaky when it comes to tournament game. And I think Michigan State, they can put themselves in the Elite Eight against Ohio State. I think they can go and beat Kansas. I don't like Kansas. I think that Kurt Aldrich, when he fell down in the Big 12 tournament, the biggest game of the year, that shows me something that maybe without him, could give Kansas State a chance to come back. Sure, Kansas won, but I think that they'll wear it down, and I can see Kansas losing. I mean, they have a very tough bracket. Probably the Midwest region is probably the toughest in the tournament.
Well, you're just like me. You're picking all these high seeds. Come on, give me somebody real low. Give me somebody in the teens.
The teens?
No, actually, there's hardly any teens, right?
Well, Siena. I think Siena could go to Elite Eight. In every bracket I've done so far, except for one, I've had Siena in the Elite Eight.
Every bracket, you're one of those guys.
I've done 3. I think 4 maybe.
One more. Let me throw out BYU. I think they've got a good chance. A lot of teams that have a star player, a potent scorer.